video so that we can post this on the website, and that way it gives everyone who was able to attend and who was not able to attend access to the video or to the webinar. Hi. Okay. And everyone, did you see me switch the slide? Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me walk through this, folks. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about lingo because, as everyone knows, HUD has a ton of lingo. We're going to discuss the funding amounts for this year, funding project and applicant eligibility. We'll talk a little bit about system performance measures. We'll talk about bonus projects. We'll give you SNOFO Light, and I'll explain that more as we get to that part of the presentation. We'll do a quick overview of the differences and what we're looking for in applications, and then we'll talk about timelines. And just so you know, we have absolutely no control over HUD's due dates, and everyone in the country is a little freaked out by the fact that it's a very compressed timeline this year. So So the screens are moving on my computer, but not on my desktop. Hey, did you see it move?
Yes.
So the Nofo is short for Notice of Funding Opportunity. The government has a lot of Nofos that they put out, but the one that we're really concerned with at this point, is the HUD Continuum of Care Competition Notice of Funding Opportunity, which is the way in which our COC gets HUD funding into the community for services and housing. It's a community-wide application process to support housing programs in Anchorage with the goal of ending homelessness. The full Nofo includes a collaborative application, which also includes a project priority listing and all of the project applications that we're forwarding onto HUD. HUD's 2022 priorities are listed right here. So you can kind of see what HUD will be looking for and what we're supposed to be looking for in the project applications in order to score well and get the funding that we want in the COC. So there's a lot of lingo in this world, and so we're just going to talk a little bit about some terms that get thrown around on the regular. The collaborative application is actually a community-wide application. So it talks about everything that's being done in the entire homelessness and prevention and response system in the Anchorage Continuum of Care. It is submitted by ACEH. We are known as the collaborative applicant, and we're the lead agency for the COC. So we are tasked with putting together the collaborative application, and we will send it all to HUD. Our collaborative application score will impact the level of funding that will be available for Tier 2 projects. The local project applications are the ones that you would fill out. There are both renewal and new applications available. Renewals are if you're going to be doing the same project of the same size with the same services for the same subpopulation. That's a renewal application. Anything changes and it becomes a new application. They will be submitted by you to us at ACEH. Once you submit your applications, they will go through a review and ranking process, and they will be scored. And all applications must document a minimum of a 25% match. So what that means is if you're asking for $100,000 for your project, you have to be able to get $25,000 from another entity, organization, or funding source so that you have a $125,000 full project. The review and rank committee will evaluate, score, and rank all local project applications, and any accepted project applications that end up on the COC priority listing. Those applicants will then need to go into the HUD's electronic eSNAPS program platform and enter and complete HUD's application, which for the Nofo is going to be a little different than the actual application that we have you fill out. And I see I didn't change Nofa to Nofo. So it used to be called a Nofa. You can tell who's been in this world for quite a while by whether or not they call it a Nofa or a Nofo. Available in Anchorage for the 2022, the federal fiscal year 2022 competitive program. Our estimated annual renewal demand is $3,648,625. So basically that is all of the projects that HUD funded in our continuum of care last year, and adjusted for operational expenses and fair market rent changes. The tier 1 amount is 95% of our annual renewal demand, or 2,762,000 plus. That is almost guaranteed funding. So basically, if you are in the tier 1 amount and you're in tier 1 in the community priority listing, then you are pretty much going to receive the funding that you ask for. The remaining 5% of our annual renewal demand is 886,000 plus. Tier 2, whether or not projects get funded, if they're in tier 2, is really dependent on the project and on the collaborative applicant score. So sometimes projects in tier 2 get funded. Last year, only one project that we submitted in tier 2 got funded. So it is a little bit riskier, which means that we're hoping that you submit applications that will be able to score well. ACEH will apply for the planning funds. Those are funds that can only be applied for by the lead agency of the continuum of care. We also have a couple of bonus opportunities. The COC bonus is a possibility of adding $182,000 to the COC funding that comes from HUD into Anchorage. And there's also a DV bonus that we can apply for at $154,000, almost $155,000. And then we'll talk about the SNOFO in a couple slides. Eligible applicants and applications. In order to be an eligible applicant, you have to meet all of these requirements. In the applications that you complete, there are additional threshold requirements. And in order for your project application to move forward, you need to be able to assert that, attest that you meet all of those requirements. This year, there will be new application. There's will be a new application, renewal applications. There's a COC planning application, which he talked about, and then YHDP. So youth homeless demonstration projects were submitted a couple of years ago from the Anchorage COC. YHDP projects are non-competitive, which means that their funding will renew regardless of application scores. They will be refunded at the same level as they were last year. They can file a renewal for that same amount of money for the same project, for the same activities, for the same group, for the same services, Or they can file a replacement if you want to change your project, change your activities. That's allowable, and we just have to make sure that that you fill out a replacement application instead of renewal application. Eligible project types. Permanent supportive housing is eligible for new and renewal programs. Eligible participants must meet the definition of homeless found in the rule, paragraphs 1, 2, or 4. So that's basically everything except for homelessness prevention. Homelessness prevention is number 3. Rapid rehousing or joint transitional housing, rapid rehousing projects also must serve categories 1, 2, or 4. The dedicated plus programs, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about them. Oh my goodness, wait a second, please. The dedicated plus programs, I basically copied what Taylor had. So I didn't see a bunch of dedicated plus in our portfolio of projects, but if we do have them, we'll definitely work with the organizations who will file renewals on those. Julie, can you, or Allison, can you go ahead, unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, so I just have 2 quick questions. So one is that as we get this information to people that are participating in the voting process, there were projects that were put into tier 2 that had they remained in tier 1 would have been renewable, but lost funding when placed in tier 2. And so how does information get to the scorers about these type of projects? That's the first one, and maybe too tough to answer. And then the second one is, you know, the secretary or assistant secretary of HUD was just here, and I had a long conversation with her about YHDP and the fact that, you know, Alaska was actually in the very first round, and now they're, I think, round 5. And the intent of this part in the Nofo was to be able to help scale some of these. So in the information that we're providing, are we seeing this as existing projects? Or are we seeing these as the ability to not necessarily say a new project, but the scalability of projects that are working? And these may not be able to be answered here, but I just want to make sure as a group that we're really aware that the reason that money was pulled in was to scale things that were working.
So you obviously have much more information on this than I do personally. But what I can tell you is that it sounds like what you're asking is whether or not YHDP programs can file for expansions. Can they request more money? Can they scale up? And in the Nofo, it specifically states that YHDP programs are not eligible for expansion this year. I don't know what that means for next year or future years or HUD's plans for them. All I can tell you is that in the notice of funding opportunity, it was very specific that expansion is not allowable this year. And actually your first question, we're going to address that, I think, a little bit later. And then after this, if that still doesn't answer your question, I'd be happy to set up a time later when you and I can talk about that. Laura, do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Since the YHDP programs are automatically renewed, are they coming out of our ARD?
They are. They're a part of our ARD. So they will automatically be renewed, and then they will be pulled out of the priority listing.
Okay, so they'll automatically go to the top.
I believe so. I could be fibbing. It could be that the YHDP programs are in addition to our ARD. I need to
Okay.
go back
Yeah,
and
I
take a
think
look.
just clarifying that would be helpful so that we kind of know kind of where we have pushback for the other programs.
Thinking about the grant inventory worksheet that HUD sent, the YHDP programs are all included in that inventory worksheet, which leads me to believe that they are included in that large number. And then we would have to pull that out. So I will take a look at that. That's a great question. We'll make note of all of these questions. We'll provide answers in an FAQ that we'll post on the website.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to flip slides. So, so this is kind of a little bit of addressing Allison's question earlier. HUD, and this is a quote directly from the Notice of Funding Opportunity as it applied to the scoring for collaborative applications or collaborative applications. HUD will prioritize funding for COCs that have demonstrated the capacity to reallocate funding from lower to higher performing projects. So one of the ways in which lower or higher performing projects are identified have to do with the scores that they receive as a part of the review and rank process. So something that I'd like to bring up here at this point is that if your project has not been able to spend 100% of the HUD COC grant amount that it's received over the course of the last couple of years, say 3, 4, 5 years, we would like you to consider applying for a smaller amount this year. What that means is that you're still getting enough to be able to fund the program at the same level that you have been, that it has been difficult. It has proven to be difficult for you to spend the entire amount that you were granted. And those monies could be used in order to set up new programs in the system. If projects voluntarily reallocate in order to create a budget that fits better based on their previous expenditures, then we do not have to involuntarily reallocate funds. So that's something that we were told very specifically when HUD TA was in town that we need to start looking at and doing. So just to give you a little bit of answer on that, as far as renewal projects are not all guaranteed to be in tier 1. In order to get the maximum number of points on the collaborative application, this is another quote from the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Laura, I'll be with you in just a sec. In order to get the maximum number of points on the application and have the best chance of being awarded bonus funding, project application scoring must have 20% of available points linked to system performance and also have 33% of available points based on objective criteria. Now, obviously, for brand new projects and brand new applicants, we will not have HMIS information in order to be able to enter system performance measures. But for previous applicants and organizations who have in the past received COC bonus or COC HUD funding, we will be pulling system performance measures out of HMIS, and that will be a large part of the scoring that our review and rank committee does. And then the 33% also based on objective criteria. So we are, as a continuum, are graded essentially on how well we are using data and what data shows in order to rank our projects. So Laura.
Yes, so I'm curious with the statement that's in the middle, HUD will prioritize funding for COCs that have demonstrated the capacity to reallocate funding. So if you're expending all of your funds and all your other budget line items, except for rental assistance, and that's due to issues with coordinated entry and all of that craziness that has kind of been gone on. I mean, is that something that is going to be taken into account when scoring an application?
It depends on how that is explained in the narrative sections. There is a spot where you can say why you haven't spent
Yeah.
all the money if you haven't, or why you feel you haven't spent all the money if you haven't. And I definitely encourage you to participate in any of the CE meetings so that we make sure that we're working on that as a process throughout the course of the year. It's not something that can necessarily be fixed right this moment as we're getting ready to do applications. I'm putting it out there because I don't know if it was in the past. I don't know if applicants were aware of the fact that when they return money to HUD, it negatively affects their score and our score for future funding opportunities.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This year we have the opportunity for bonus funding. A total of over $337 that could be added to projects in our COC. And then get wrapped into our annual renewal demand, which is the best way, which is how we increase the amount of funding we could potentially get from year to year. There's a DV bonus, and this talks about what is eligible. So rapid rehousing or a joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing project. It can be an expansion of an existing project, but the expansion or the project has to have 100% of participants that are survivors of domestic or dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. The scoring for the DV bonus project is different than the other COC bonus project. And these are the specific things that HUD will be looking at in order to determine whether or not the project we submit is going to be eligible for DV bonus funding. And there's the COC bonus, which is just over $182,000. The projects can be permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, or a joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing project. It can be an expansion of an existing project. Eligible participants must meet the rules, definitions in paragraphs 1, 2, and 4, which again means everything except for homelessness prevention. Scoring, the COC bonus project is considered as a new or an expansion application, and it will be scored with the rest of the project applications during review and rank. So bonus projects and reallocations are the only ways in the standard COC NOFO process to add new projects into the Alaska 500 Continuum of Care, which is Anchorage. Approved bonus projects become eligible for renewal the following year and then are added into our ARD. So they increase the overall funding that our COC can receive. Coordination with housing and healthcare. Again, this year, just like last year, HUD is providing incentives to create projects that coordinate housing and healthcare. Communities this year can receive up to 14 bonus points on their collaborative application if they have a new or expanded project that does combine housing and healthcare supports. Last year, we got 5 out of the 10 bonus projects that were available. The project should leverage non-COC or ESG housing resources for at least 25% of the units. So they want to see that we're braiding funding sources together in order to support sustainability for our projects. And you need to have a written commitment from at least from a healthcare provider with the value of their commitment. whether it's cash or in-kind services, and the dates that the resources will be provided. So they can provide services for the residents of the housing program, or they can actually provide cash in order to support the services needed by the residents of the housing program. A little about what we are not so affectionately calling the SNOFO, which is the special Nofo to address unsheltered homelessness. This is a brand new thing, hadn't been done before. And the process and timeline is laid right over the top of the standard Nofo process and timeline. So Anchorage has the opportunity to bring in $1.8 million in new funding. So that $1.8 million comes in over the course of 3 years, which is basically just over $600,000 per year. Now, it doesn't have to be spent exactly in thirds, third. It just needs to be, spent over that time period. There's also a 3-year planning fund opportunity for the lead agency to apply for $54,000 to help the COC to run the COC, and that also is split over 3 years. So the majority of the application that we put together for the SNOFO actually was taken directly from eSNAPs. On this one, we had the eSNAPs application available to us to use. So there are some additional questions that were asked in addition to the questions that are in eSNAPs. But if you fill out this application and your project is selected to be on the priority list, then it should be relatively easy for you to copy and paste your answers into the eSNAPs online platform. Applications must go through the same competitive COC process. The plan for serving individuals and families experiencing homelessness with severe service needs is currently in development for the Anchorage COC. The vast majority of points that are available for our collaborative application have to do with this plan. And the SNOFO will be highly competitive on a national level. It can support permanent housing projects, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, or joint transitional housing, rapid rehousing. It can also support supportive services only. So you can file an application that doesn't have a housing component, that just has the supportive services in it. Participants have to meet the criteria in the rule paragraphs 1 and 4. There's an asterisk next to 1 because there's a whole bunch of except for and in addition to that I wasn't going to copy and paste and put on this slide. But if you're going to be applying for a SNOFO project, we can take a look at that paragraph together, or I strongly recommend you read the full notice of funding opportunity. Details of these projects, they're all new projects. So there are no renewals, it's brand new and it needs to be a new program. You have to document a 25% match. They cannot be ones currently operated using other funding sources. We are not eligible for construction, acquisition, or remodel. There's also a rural component to this notice of funding opportunity. The Anchorage COC does not meet the criteria for the rural component of this funding. There's a focus on addressing unsheltered homelessness and outreach, on leveraging healthcare resources, and on the creation of new housing opportunities. Just talking a little bit about the competition and application overview. The applications should be up now. Sasha was working on that just as the webinar was getting started. So if you go to aceh.org/Nofo, you should be able to find the 3 applications, a new one and a renewal one for the regular COC Nofo, and then an application for the SNOFO as well. We believe that the narrative sections in eSNAPs are going to be limited to 2,500 characters for both the SNOFO and the Nofo. It was 2,000 characters last year, so they bumped it up a little bit. At least that's what we think. We haven't actually seen the detailed instructions for either of these project applications from HUD yet. We're being told that they think they should have them out the beginning of next week. And that's where they list what the character limits are. AHFC, Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, funding from the state has not been increased. So they will only be able to match the same amount for renewal projects as they did last year. There will be no AHFC match available for new projects. So just to keep that in mind, that you'll need to, if you're filing for a new project or an expansion, you'll need to find that 25% match elsewhere. Also, we're human and we're new. So your entire grants department is essentially less than a year old. I have to tell you, I stole a bunch of stuff from some of Taylor's previous year's presentations, but please let us know if there's an error in the application or if anything is unclear. And we will make sure that we transparently list all of the questions and answers in an FAQ on the website. Let's talk about deadlines. Both application types are being released today, August 12th. We're going to work on the Nofo application process first because it's much more compressed than the SNOFO is. We'll offer project application support sessions on Wednesdays, probably over Teams or Zoom. So August 17th and 24th, we'll put notices of and the links on how to get to those up on the website and send them out over email if you attended this event. And that's basically just question and answer, and we'll do what we can to work through processes. The applications for local projects will be due to AHFC August 30th. That is required by HUD. That's 30 days before the day we have to get it to them. And so that's it. August 30th. Between August 31st and September 13th, we'll be putting the applications together and getting them to the rank and review committee who will be scoring them. September 14th, we will post the scores and the priority list for that we will be submitting to HUD. On September 14th and 21st, we'll offer eSNAP's project application entry support because anyone whose project ends up on this priority list will have to then enter that project into eSNAP's. And the full project application, which includes the collaborative application, all of the project applications, the priority listing, and all of the required attachments are going to be submitted on eSNAPs on September 23rd. So that's Nofo. Then we're releasing the SNOFO application right now. We will offer SNOFO support sessions on August 31st and September 7th. The project applications will be due to ACEH on September 15th. Between the 16th and the 3rd, we'll put the documents together and get them to the review and rank committee for scores. On October 4th, we will publish the scores and priority listing. Between the 4th and the 12th, we'll offer eSNAP SNOFO application entry support. And on October 13th, we will submit the collaborative application, all the project applications, the priority listing, and all of the required attachments to HUD over eSNAPs. So we recommend that you read the Nofo and the SNOFO and use the detailed instructions to complete your project applications when they are available. As soon as they become available, we will put them on the aceh.org/Nofo webpage. And it's like a novel, right? The Nofos are long and they're a little bit complicated and they tend to make me go to sleep. But it's really the way that we make sure that we're giving HUD the information it needs. Technical assistance will be offered on Wednesdays throughout both application timelines. We'll just have a Zoom or a Teams that's open for a couple of hours each Wednesday. Updated FAQs will be posted every Thursday. Links to additional resource materials will be available on the webpage as soon as we become aware of their existence. And then you can also always reach out to the grants department, Julie Frizzell or myself, by emailing grants@aceh.org. So that was a lot of information in a very brief amount of time. And we've got about 20 minutes left to answer any other questions that you might have.
Yes, this is LaChantel with Revitalizing Community Services. I have a question. Sorry about the background noise. I have a question in regards to the Nofo application. Are there any restrictions on either construction, rehabilitation, or acquisition on the Nofa? I noticed that the SNOFO does, but does the Nofo have limitations or restrictions on that?
So the Nofo pays for operational costs
Okay.
for those types of housing entities. LaChantel, let's you and I get together at some point and do a little deeper dive, or maybe someone else who's been through this more than once has an answer to that. But I personally would need to look it up unless someone else wants to pipe in. Okay, so let's you and I connect at some point next week.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I think what usually happens is if you want like acquisition or rehabilitation, usually I've seen agencies apply for CDBG funds for that, and then apply to the COC for the permanent supportive housing funds to put those vouchers in whatever project they put together with the CDBG funds.
I think so. Yes, Laura, that's kind of what I think is the answer. Jessica, that is the question she was asking. Can regular COC funds support construction, acquisition, or rehab? You want to unmute? So, LaChantel, I think not, but let's talk about it, okay? So we can see what other options there might be.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Yes, you can, but they have to also document. Okay, so yeah, we'll get together later. Allison, go ahead.
Hey, so I'm not sure it's a question, and maybe it's because like I've been in this for 25 years. I remember when the first COC competition came into effect, and we were actually in our mind competing against each other, as opposed to realizing these are dollars we bring into our community. And I understand that HUD has this process about how to develop raters and how to develop groups that score projects. The one thing that I would just say is that, as an example, YHDP, Youth HUD Demonstration Project, you know, at the time that happened, we literally did not even have an executive director of the coalition. And so, but it brought those dollars into our community. And there's a lot of learnings that have happened from that. And as we look at where we rank things, the example last year of a particular project being ranked in tier 2, got no funding or got limited funding, but yet could have been ranked 1. And it's one of those really hard things that I hope people realize that there are existing projects that are really trying to make a difference and are making a difference in the community. And each time we make that case, we add to our renewal. When I first started this with, even Covenant House or with the COC, we were about $900,000 a year in COC. So while there's points and there's value, there's also a lot of strategy involved in this. And as people on this webinar are thinking of amazing projects that should be considered, thought of, we really should have a strategy meeting about how to bring them on, as opposed to how to bring them on and lose something that might be working. And I'm not sure whether the coalition wants to host that or participate in that, but it really isn't as simple as it's okay to bring things on and there's a consequence, but sometimes that consequence is the right consequence, right? There are programs that haven't been able to deliver. So you won't hear me discourage anyone on this, webinar to bring on a new project, but it's about, let's think about the strategy around it, because the strategy has taken us from about $900,000 a year to 3 point whatever a year. And so it is more than just trying to get the points. It's about the strategy of our community working together to bring on a lot of different things. So I guess I didn't have a question. I just want to make that statement.
No problem. And I do know that strategic planning is definitely in the works for the organization. Probably not until later this fall, possibly winter, just because everything has grown quite a lot in the last 5 years or so. And so coming together and operating as a system, which is what the coalition is supposed to do, that's definitely a part of the conversation that needs to happen. And I will pass that message along to Meg as she prepares for some strategic planning for the organization. Thank you. Ada?
Thank you so much. And I wanted to say a special thank you to the last speaker, because my question was going to be regarding rankings and scoring. And I'm not going to spend so much time into, asking that question anymore, but to actually just emphasize and encourage that people like us, first of all, my name is Daisy Worker, and I'm with Revive Alaska Community Services. And we have been providing services for the past 7-8 years. And we have only started requesting for funds or applying for grants within the past 1 year. So we're kind of newbies to this. So what she has suggested is a dream come true for us. If that happens, we would be more equipped and we would get what we need as per assistance in getting to know how to get things done, because definitely we need the funds to be able to serve our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Anyone else? Going once. Going twice. Well, the staff at ACEH, of course, is always available. If you do come up with any questions, we're going to post this. So if there's anything that you may have missed or that I wasn't clear on, it'll give you an opportunity to go through the slides again. Please go to the website and take a look at those applications. And I think I can give you about 10 minutes of your day back And I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.